I'm Dana Carter, 32 years old. Last summer at our family dinner in Madison, Wisconsin, my sister leaned across the table, her wine glass glinting under the chandelier. "Dana," she said, her voice dripping with mockery, "if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." The room erupted in laughter, my parents, her friends, everyone. Their chuckles sliced through me, each one sharper than the last. I sat there, my fork frozen mid-air, the weight of their dismissal crushing my chest. I wasn't just invisible. I was a joke. I forced a smile, raised my glass, and locked eyes with her. "Challenge accepted," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm inside. The table went quiet, their smug grins fading. That night, while they slept, I packed a single bag, left a note on the kitchen counter, and walked out the door. I didn't look back. 6 months later, my phone buzzed relentlessly. 20 missed calls from my father, a string of frantic texts from my mother. "Where are you? Please call us." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. They noticed now, didn't they? But I wasn't the same Dana they laughed at. I'd built something new, something they couldn't ignore, and I wasn't done yet. Do you think I was right to walk away? Share your thoughts in the comments. To understand why I left, you need to know the Carters. My father, Don Carter, built Carter Marketing into a Midwest powerhouse, crafting campaigns for local brands and national chains alike. At 60, he ran the company with an iron grip, his sharp suits and sharper words commanding every room. My mother, Nancy Carter, 58, was the family's social architect, hosting charity galas and managing our public image. Their pride was my sister, Alicia Carter, 35, the golden child groomed to take over. She thrived in boardrooms, her polished pitches winning clients effortlessly. Me, I was the odd one out. I'd been a content marketing specialist for nearly a decade, crafting stories for startups and small businesses. I loved the freedom, writing blog posts, designing social media campaigns, building brands from scratch. My laptop was my office, my ideas, my currency. But to Don, my work was a hobby, not a career. "When are you joining the family business?" Dana, he'd ask, his voice heavy with expectation. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday, the question hung over me like a storm cloud. Nancy wasn't much better. Alicia's closing deals worth millions, she'd say, slicing into her roast. "Your little blogs can't compare." I'd nod, forcing a smile, but their words stung. I tried to fit in. Last spring, I attended one of their strategy meetings at Carter Marketing's sleek downtown office. Glass walls, leather chairs, the hum of ambition. Alicia presented a campaign for a brewery chain, her slides flawless. I offered an idea, a viral video series to boost engagement. The room went silent. Don frowned. "We don't do gimmicks," he said. Nancy chimed in. "Stick to what works, Dana, like Alicia." My cheeks burned, but I stayed quiet. Later, I overheard Alicia pitching my video idea to a junior exec, claiming it as her own. I confronted her privately. "It's just business," she said, smirking. I swallowed my anger, but it festered. Week after week, I showed up to family meetings, hoping to prove myself. I'd share insights from my freelance projects, data on audience engagement trends in digital marketing. Don would cut me off. "We're not a startup, Dana. Focus on real work." Nancy would add, "You're wasting your potential." Alicia never defended me. She'd just sip her coffee, her eyes gleaming with quiet victory. I'd leave those meetings feeling like a stranger in my own family. My passion for content creation dismissed as childish. My freelance work kept me sane. I'd spend nights in my apartment drafting campaigns for a local coffee shop or a tech startup. My clients loved my ideas, fresh, authentic, impactful. One project, a blog series for a Madison nonprofit, went viral, earning thousands of shares. I showed the metrics to Don, hoping for a nod of approval. He glanced at my laptop, then said, "Nice side project. But Carter Marketing needs you full-time." Nancy agreed. "You're 32, Dana. It's time to grow up." Their words weren't just criticism, they were a demand to erase who I was. I started doubting myself. Maybe they were right. Maybe my work wasn't enough. I'd scroll through Alicia's LinkedIn, her posts about landing big clients, and feel small. But deep down, I knew I loved my craft. Creating content wasn't just a job. It was how I made sense of the world. Yet every family gathering chipped away at that truth. I'd sit at their polished dining table listening to Dawn praise Alicia's latest deal, or Nancy plan another gala, and feel like I didn't belong. I wasn't their vision of success. The pressure wasn't new, but it was relentless. Dawn once gave me an ultimatum: join Carter Marketing by summer or lose my stake in the family trust. It's worth over $1 million, he said, his tone cold. Nancy backed him up. We're a legacy, Dana. Don't throw it away. I wanted to scream that I didn't care about their money, I cared about my work. But I stayed silent, nodding like always. Alicia watched her smile sharp, knowing she'd won another round. That relentless pressure from my family wasn't new. It started years ago, back when I was 16, a junior at Madison West High School. Alicia was 19, a senior, always one step ahead. We were paired for a group presentation in our history class tasked with analyzing the civil rights movement. I saw it as my chance to shine. I spent weeks researching, digging into primary sources, crafting a narrative about grassroots activism. I stayed up past midnight typing slides, fact-checking dates, and rehearsing my points. Alicia barely showed up to our planning sessions. "You've got this, Dana," she'd say, flipping through her phone. I believed her, thinking we were a team. The day of the presentation, I arrived early, my notes neatly organized. Our classmates filled the room, their chatter buzzing around me. The teacher, Ms. Larson, called us up. I started, my voice steady, laying out the timeline of key protests. I was halfway through explaining the Montgomery bus boycott when Alicia cut in. "Actually," she said, stepping forward, "let me clarify." She launched into my points word for word, her tone confident, her gestures practiced. I froze, my notes crumpling in my hands. She didn't just repeat my work, she owned it, adding flair, making the class laugh with a quip I'd never heard. Ms. Larson nodded, impressed. "Excellent insight," she said. The class clapped, their eyes on Alicia. I tried to jump back in. I was going to say I started, but Alicia waved me off. "I've got it, Dana," she said, smiling sweetly. The room didn't notice my clipped words or shaking hands. I stood there sidelined as she finished the presentation, basking in the applause. When we sat down, a classmate whispered, "Alicia killed it." I forced a nod, my throat tight. After class, Ms. Larson handed back our grades, an A for both of us. "You two make a great team," she said. I wanted to scream that I'd done everything. That night, I confronted Alicia in her room. "Why did you do that?" I asked, my voice shaking. She was sprawled on her bed, scrolling through her phone. "Do what she said," not looking up. "Take my work and act like it was yours." She laughed, sharp and dismissive. "It's just a school project, Dana. Don't be so dramatic." I stood there waiting for an apology that never came. Her nonchalance cut deeper than the act itself. She didn't care that she'd humiliated me, she enjoyed it. I told myself it was a one-off, that she'd just gotten carried away. But the next week, I overheard her telling friends how she nailed the presentation. She didn't mention me. At home, Dawn and Nancy praised her. "Alicia's a natural leader," Dawn said over dinner. Nancy nodded. "You should be more like her, Dana." I stared at my plate, my anger simmering. I'd poured my heart into that project, and she'd stolen it without a second thought. That moment stuck with me. It wasn't just about the presentation, it was Alicia's need to win, to make sure I stayed in her shadow. I started noticing it more, her subtle jabs, her knack for turning my efforts into her spotlight. I'd suggest an idea for a school event, and she'd pitch it louder, better, claiming credit. I'd join a club, and she'd charm her way to the top. Alicia's selfishness in high school wasn't a one-time thing. It followed us into adulthood, right into the heart of Carter marketing. Last April, I decided to give the family business another shot. I wasn't ready to abandon my freelance content marketing, but I thought I could find a way to contribute, maybe earn Dawn and Nancy's respect. Carter Marketing was chasing a big contract, a social media campaign for a national fitness chain worth over $2 million. I saw an opportunity to prove myself. I spent weeks brainstorming. My idea was bold, a series of short, authentic videos featuring real gym members sharing their fitness journeys, paired with a hashtag campaign to drive engagement. I analyzed trends, crunched data on audience retention, and built a pitch deck that blended creativity with strategy. I was proud of it, my best work yet. At the next strategy meeting, I volunteered to present. The conference room at Carter Marketing's downtown Madison office was packed, executives, junior staff, Dawn at the head of the table. I stood up my slides ready and walked them through the concept. This campaign will connect emotionally, I said, pointing to the data. It's fresh, it's scalable, it's what the client wants. The room listened, some nodding, others taking notes. I felt a spark of hope. Then Alicia spoke. "I love the energy, Dana," she said, her voice smooth, "but I've got something similar." She clicked open her own deck and my stomach dropped. Her slides mirrored mine, same video concept, same hashtag, even my phrasing about authentic stories. She'd tweaked the visuals, added her usual polish, but it was my idea, repackaged. "I've been working on this for weeks," she said, smiling at the team. "It's ready to pitch to the client." The executives murmured approval. Dawn leaned forward. "This is exactly what we need." "Alicia," he said. Nancy added, "It's polished, professional. Great work." No one looked at me. I sat there, my hands clenched under the table. I wanted to call her out, but the room was buzzing with excitement. Alicia moved on, outlining next steps, as if I hadn't spoken. After the meeting, I caught her in the hallway. "That was my idea, Alicia," I said, keeping my voice low. She didn't flinch. "Ideas evolve, Dana," she replied, adjusting her blazer. "I made it better. You should be thanking me." Her dismissal was so casual it burned. I went to Dawn later that day, hoping he'd see the truth. "Alicia's campaign came from my pitch," I said, showing him my original deck. He barely glanced at it. "Alicia's the lead on this. Dana," he said, his tone final. "She's got the experience." "Let it go." I tried Nancy next, catching her at home. "Alicia took my work," I said, my voice tight. Nancy sighed. "You're overreacting. Alicia's campaign is what's best for the company." Their words hit like a betrayal, not just from Alicia, but from them. They didn't care about fairness, they cared about winning. The fitness chain loved the campaign. Alicia pitched it to them in Chicago, and they signed the contract within days. Back at Carter Marketing, Don threw a celebratory lunch. To Alicia, he toasted, raising his glass. "For landing one of our biggest deals yet." Nancy beamed, clapping with the team. I stood in the back, forcing a smile, my chest tight with anger. No one mentioned my contribution. I felt erased, like my work didn't exist unless Alicia claimed it. That wasn't the first time she'd taken credit, but it was the worst. I'd poured everything into that pitch, hoping it would show Dawn and Nancy I belonged. Instead, they celebrated Alicia, blind to her deceit. I started questioning why I kept trying. Every meeting, every idea I shared ended the same way, dismissed or stolen. I loved creating content, telling stories that mattered, but at Carter Marketing, my voice was drowned out. I went home that night and opened my laptop. My freelance projects, a blog for a local bakery, a social campaign for a startup, reminded me who I was. I wasn't ready to give up, but I knew I couldn't keep fighting for a place in a family that didn't see me. That betrayal fueled my resolve to carve my own path. That lunch celebrating Alicia's stolen campaign was the final straw, but I still hoped I could salvage my place in the family. It was July, and Dawn had been pushing for a big family dinner at their Madison home, a chance to reconnect. I wanted to believe things could change. Maybe I thought if I showed up and engaged, they'd see me differently. I spent the week before preparing myself rehearsing how I'd share my latest freelance project, a social media campaign for a local bookstore that had doubled their online sales. I imagined Dawn nodding, Nancy smiling, maybe even Alicia acknowledging my work. I was naive. The dinner was a bigger affair than usual. Dawn invited a few Carter marketing clients, their spouses, and some family friends, about 20 people in all. I arrived early, dressed in a blazer I thought looked professional, hoping to fit in. Nancy greeted me with a quick hug, then turned to a client, praising Alicia's recent deal. Don was busy shaking hands, his voice booming about the company's success. I stood by the dining room, clutching my glass of water, feeling like a guest at my own family's event. We sat down to eat, the table laden with food. The conversation started innocently, clients discussing market trends, Dawn boasting about a new contract. I seized a lull to share my bookstore campaign. I crafted a series of Instagram posts, I said, my voice steady. It drove over 10,000 engagements in a week. I looked at Dawn, expecting a response. He glanced up, then turned to a client. "That's nice, Dana. Alicia's working on something similar but bigger." My face flushed. Nancy changed the subject, asking Alicia about her latest pitch. I sank back in my chair, my words ignored. As dessert was served, Alicia leaned across the table, her eyes glinting. "You know, Dana," she said loud enough for everyone to hear, "if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice." The table erupted in laughter. Don chuckled, shaking his head. Nancy giggled, covering her mouth. The clients joined in their laughs, sharp and careless. I froze, my fork clattering against my plate. The room seemed to shrink, their amusement a wall closing in. It wasn't just Alicia's words, it was the way everyone agreed, as if I was nothing. I forced myself to respond. "Funny, Alicia?" I said, my voice tight. "Maybe I'll test that theory." She smirked, sipping her wine. Don waved a hand. "Oh, come on, it's just a joke," he said. Nancy nodded. "Don't be so sensitive, Dana." Their casual dismissal cut deeper than the laughter. I looked around the table, clients whispering, friends avoiding my gaze. My family, the people who should have had my back, were complicit. I felt betrayed, not just by Alicia, but by Dawn and Nancy, who laughed along without a second thought. I sat through the rest of the dinner, my appetite gone. Every smile, every clink of glasses felt like a mockery. I'd spent years trying to prove myself to be part of this family, but that moment made it clear they didn't see me. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, not as someone who mattered. Alicia's words were cruel, but Dawn and Nancy's laughter confirmed the truth: they didn't care. I couldn't keep pretending I belonged. As the guests left, I stayed quiet, helping Nancy clear plates to avoid suspicion. But my mind was made up. I couldn't stay in a family that erased me. That night, while they slept, I grabbed my bag and walked out. I didn't need their approval anymore. I needed to be free. I couldn't stay in a house where I was a punchline. The moment I decided to leave, my mind raced with what came next. I needed a plan, someone I could trust. That's when I called my friend Shannon Miller. We'd been close since college, bonding over late-night study sessions and shared dreams of independence. Shannon, now 32, worked as a graphic designer in Madison and always had my back. I dialed her number as I sat in my car outside Dawn and Nancy's house, the engine still warm. "Shannon, I'm done," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "I'm leaving my family." She didn't hesitate. "Come to my place," she said. "We'll figure it out." I drove across town to her apartment in the Atwood neighborhood, my hands gripping the wheel. When I arrived, Shannon was waiting with a cup of coffee and a notebook. "Tell me everything," she said, sitting across from me. I poured out the story: the dinner, Alicia's cruel words, Dawn and Nancy's laughter. She listened, nodding, her eyes sharp with anger. "You don't deserve that," she said. "Let's make a plan." We stayed up past midnight, mapping out my next steps. First, I needed a new place to live, somewhere far enough from Dawn and Nancy's upscale West Side to feel like a fresh start. Shannon pulled up rental listings on her laptop. We found a one-bedroom apartment in the Willie Street area affordable on my freelance income. It had a small balcony, enough space for my laptop and books. "This is you," Shannon said, pointing at the screen. I nodded, feeling a spark of hope. We called the landlord that night, scheduling a viewing for the next morning. Next, we tackled logistics. I had savings about $30,000 from freelance projects, but I needed to secure my financial independence. Dawn had mentioned a family trust worth over $1 million where I had a small stake. I didn't want their money, but I wasn't going to let them hold it over me. Shannon suggested a lawyer. "You need to protect yourself," she said. I agreed. We found a local attorney, Nathan Brooks, who specialized in family law. I emailed him outlining my situation, and he replied within hours, offering a consultation. "He sounds solid," Shannon said, reading his response. I felt a weight lift, knowing I wasn't alone. Then came the hardest part, the letter. I wanted to leave a clear message, not out of spite, but to close this chapter. I sat at Shannon's kitchen table, pen in hand, and wrote, "Dawn, Nancy, Alicia," I began. "I'm leaving to build my own life. I've tried to be part of this family, but I can't keep fighting for a place you don't want me to have. I'm dividing my share of the trust equally with Alicia, as it's only fair. Don't contact me. I wish you well." The words were calm, deliberate, not the angry outburst I felt inside. Shannon read it and nodded. "It's strong," she said. "You're doing the right thing." The next morning, we visited the Willie Street apartment. It was small but bright, with hardwood floors and a view of the street. I signed the lease on the spot, my hands steady. Back at Shannon's, I packed my essentials, laptop, clothes, a few books into a single duffel bag. I didn't want anything tying me to my old life. That evening, I drove back to Dawn and Nancy's house. It was past 10, the lights off. I slipped the letter onto the kitchen counter next to a stack of unopened mail. I stood there for a moment, the silence heavy, then walked out. Cutting contact was the final step. I blocked Dawn, Nancy, and Alicia's numbers on my phone. I removed them from my social media, unfollowing Carter Marketing's accounts for good measure. It wasn't about anger, it was about freedom. Shannon drove me to the new apartment, helping me carry my bag up the stairs. "You're going to be okay," she said, hugging me tightly. I believed her. That letter was my line in the sand. I'd walked away from my family, and now it was time to build something new. My new apartment in Madison's Willie Street neighborhood was small, a one-bedroom with creaky hardwood floors and a tiny kitchen, but it was mine. I moved in with just a duffel bag, a laptop, and a folding chair, but Shannon was there to help me make it a home. Shannon brought over a spare coffee table and some mismatched mugs, insisting I needed vibes, not just furniture. We spent that first weekend unpacking, laughing as we hung a string of fairy lights to brighten the place. "This is your fresh start," she said, handing me a mug. I smiled, feeling a flicker of possibility. Shannon wasn't just there for logistics. She helped me navigate the chaos of starting over. When my internet wasn't set up, she let me borrow her hotspot so I could meet deadlines. She introduced me to a local cafe owner who needed a social media overhaul, landing me my first new client in the neighborhood. "You're a genius at this," she said, watching me draft a content calendar. Her faith in me was steadying, a reminder I wasn't alone. My friend Seth Thompson was another lifeline. Seth, a 32-year-old photographer I'd known since high school, had a knack for lifting my spirits. He stopped by a few days after I moved in, carrying a takeout pizza and his camera. "This place needs you in it," he said, snapping a candid shot of me unpacking books. We talked for hours, sprawled on my floor. I admitted how much my family's rejection still stung, Dawn's dismissal, Nancy's laughter, Alicia's cruelty. Seth listened, his face serious. "They don't define you," he said. "You're more than their approval." His words hit deep, easing the ache I'd carried for months. I threw myself into freelance content marketing. My days started early, coffee in hand, drafting blog posts and social campaigns from my laptop. The cafe owner's project was a hit. My Instagram posts tripled her foot traffic in 2 weeks. That success led to a referral, a craft brewery needing a rebrand. I spent nights researching their audience, crafting a campaign that blended humor with authenticity. For the first time in years, I felt in control. Each project was a chance to tell a story, to create something that mattered. I wasn't chasing Dawn's nod or Alicia's shadow. I was building my own path. Shannon and Seth kept me grounded. Shannon dragged me to a local farmer's market, insisting I needed fresh air. We wandered through stalls, her teasing me about my terrible bargaining skills. "You're too nice," she laughed, buying me a bag of apples. Those outings reminded me there was life beyond my laptop. Seth, meanwhile, pushed me to dream bigger. One evening over beers at a Willie Street bar, he suggested I start my own content marketing agency. "You've got the talent," he said. "Why not scale it?" I brushed it off at first, but the idea lingered, sparking a fire I hadn't felt in years. My work became my refuge. I took on a third client, a nonprofit focused on literacy, and poured my heart into their blog series. The posts went viral, earning thousands of shares, and a thank you email from the director. I pinned that email to my fridge, a small trophy of my worth. Slowly, I rediscovered the joy of creating, writing stories, designing campaigns, connecting with audiences. It wasn't just work. It was who I was. There were hard days, too. I'd catch myself wondering if Dawn or Nancy had read my letter, if Alicia cared that I was gone. But Shannon and Seth were there to pull me back. Shannon would show up with takeout, talking me through doubts. Seth sent me silly memes reminding me to laugh. Their support, so different from my family's indifference, gave me strength. I wasn't just surviving, I was starting to thrive. By August, my apartment felt like home. I'd added a desk, a plant, and a proper chair. My freelance roster was growing, and so was my confidence. I was finding my passion again, piece by piece. That spark was just the beginning. By September, I was ready to take my new life further. My freelance work was thriving, but I craved something bigger, a chance to make a real impact. That's when I met Nathan Brooks again, this time not as my lawyer, but as Nathan Brooks, a startup founder. I'd run into him at a networking event in Madison's Capitol Square, organized for local creatives. He was pitching his new media startup, a platform for short-form video content aimed at small businesses. I was intrigued. His vision aligned with my passion for storytelling. After his talk, I introduced myself. "I worked with you on a trust issue," I said, shaking his hand. He smiled, remembering. "You're the content marketing expert, right?" he said. "I could use someone like you." We grabbed coffee the next day at a cafe on State Street. Nathan outlined his startup's needs, a bold marketing strategy to launch their platform. "I've seen your freelance work," he said, referencing my brewery campaign. "You could lead our content team." The offer was tempting, a full-time role, creative control, and a chance to shape a growing company. I hesitated, though. Joining a startup meant risk, and I'd just found stability. "Can I think it over?" I asked. Nathan nodded. "Take your time," he said. "But I know you'd kill it." His confidence stayed with me, a reminder of what I could achieve. At the same time, I knew I needed to face the deeper wounds my family had left. My friend Shannon had been pushing me to try therapy, saying it helped her after a tough breakup. I was skeptical, but desperate to move past the pain of Alicia's mockery and Dawn and Nancy's betrayal. I booked an appointment with Dr. Susan Harper, a therapist in Madison recommended by a client. At our first session in her quiet office, I felt nervous. Dr. Susan, a calm woman in her 50s, asked me to start wherever I wanted. I told her about the dinner, about my sister's words. "If you disappeared, no one would even notice," and how my parents laughed. My voice broke as I described feeling invisible. Dr. Susan listened, her eyes steady. "That kind of rejection cuts deep," she said. "But you're here taking steps to heal?" She guided me to unpack the years of being overshadowed by Alicia in high school, at Carter Marketing, at that final dinner. We talked about my childhood, how Dawn's expectations and Nancy's indifference shaped me. "You've been carrying their judgment," Dr. Susan said. "It's time to let it go." She taught me to reframe those moments to see my worth beyond their approval. It wasn't easy. Some sessions left me drained, replaying memories I'd buried, but others felt freeing, like shedding a weight I didn't know I held. Over the next few weeks, I met with Dr. Susan twice a month. She gave me tools, journaling prompts, breathing exercises to process my anger and hurt. One exercise stuck with me, writing letters I'd never send. I wrote to Alicia, pouring out my frustration at her cruelty. I wrote to Don, asking why he never saw me. I wrote to Nancy, wishing she'd stood up for me. I burned the letters in my apartment, the smoke curling out my window. It felt like a release, a way to reclaim my voice. Meanwhile, I kept meeting Nathan, discussing his startup over coffee or quick lunches. He shared his business plan, asking for my input on branding. I suggested a campaign focused on authentic user stories, drawing on my freelance experience. "That's why I need you," Nathan said, grinning. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I started to see myself in that role, not just a freelancer, but a leader. Therapy and Nathan's offer intertwined in ways I hadn't expected. Dr. Susan helped me realize I'd been afraid to take risks, scared of failing without my family's validation. "You don't need their permission to succeed," she said in one session. That clicked. I called Nathan the next day. "I'm in," I said. "Let's build this thing." He laughed. That's the spirit. I felt a surge of excitement, like I was finally stepping into my own power. My work with Dr. Susan wasn't done, but I was learning to face my past without letting it define me. That choice opened new doors. By October, I was diving headfirst into my role at Nathan's startup. The work was intense, but it felt right. One morning, Nathan called me into his office, a cramped space buzzing with energy. "We've got a shot at a big contract," he said, sliding a proposal across the desk. It was for a major Madison media festival, an annual event showcasing local businesses. The client, a tourism board, wanted a campaign to promote the festival's digital presence, social media videos, the works. "This is your wheelhouse," Nathan said. "Lead it." I felt a rush of excitement. This was the kind of project I'd dreamed of, a chance to make my mark. I threw myself into the campaign. My team, 3 junior marketers and a graphic designer, brainstormed with me daily. We crafted a strategy blending Instagram Reels, TikTok challenges, and a sleek website overhaul to draw younger crowds. I spent late nights sketching ideas, refining slogans, and editing video scripts. The budget was tight, about $50,000, but I stretched every dollar, negotiating with local influencers to amplify our reach. Nathan checked in often, offering feedback. "You're killing it," he said after reviewing our first video draft. His trust pushed me to work harder. A week into the project, I got a jolt. Shannon texted me a link to a local business article. Carter Marketing, my family's company, was also pitching for the festival contract. My stomach dropped. Alicia was leading their campaign, with Dawn and Nancy backing her. I hadn't spoken to them since I left, and now I was competing against them. "You've got this," Shannon texted. "Show them what you're made of." Her words steadied me, but the stakes felt personal. I didn't want to just win. I wanted to prove I was more than their punchline. I doubled down on preparation. The festival was set for late October at a downtown Madison venue, a sleek convention center packed with industry insiders. Our pitch was scheduled for the opening night, a high-profile presentation to the tourism board and local sponsors. I rehearsed my slides, relentlessly practicing in front of Seth, who'd become my unofficial cheerleader. "You're going to crush it," he said, sprawled on my couch. I wasn't so sure. The thought of facing Alicia, Dawn, and Nancy at the event made my chest tight. Dr. Susan's advice echoed in my mind. "You don't need their approval to shine." I clung to that, focusing on the work. As the event approached, I learned more about Carter's campaign. A contact at the tourism board mentioned they were pushing a traditional ad-heavy approach: billboards, radio spots, print. It was polished but predictable, the kind of strategy Dawn loved. Ours was riskier, leaning on digital trends and community engagement. I saw an edge, but also a challenge. If we faltered, Carter would capitalize. I met with my team daily, fine-tuning every detail. We shot a final video featuring local artisans tying their stories to the festival's theme. The footage was raw, authentic, and I knew it could resonate. The night before the pitch, I got a tip from a colleague Dawn, Nancy, and Alicia would all be at the festival. I hadn't seen them since the dinner, and the thought of standing in the same room made my hands shake. I called Dr. Susan for an emergency session. "You're not that invisible girl anymore," she said. "You've built something real. Let them see it." Her words grounded me. I wasn't just competing for a contract, I was proving my worth to myself more than anyone. On the morning of the event, I woke early reviewing my notes. Nathan joined me at the venue, helping set up our booth. "We're ready," he said, clapping my shoulder. I nodded, but my mind was on the crowd. Somewhere out there, my family would be watching. That stage was my chance to shine. The Madison Media Festival buzzed with energy, the convention center packed with sponsors, reporters, and local business owners. My heart pounded as I stood backstage, clutching my notes. Nathan gave me a nod from the sidelines. "You've got this," he whispered. I adjusted my blazer, took a deep breath, and stepped into the spotlight. The room fell silent as I began. My presentation was sharp, weaving our campaign's story, local artisans, vibrant TikTok challenges, and a website that felt alive. I showed a video we'd produced highlighting Madison's culture through real voices, not polished ads. The crowd leaned in, some nodding, others scribbling notes. I spoke with confidence, my voice steady despite the nerves. "This festival isn't just an event," I said. "It's a celebration of our community." The applause was loud, almost overwhelming, as I stepped off the stage. Nathan high-fived me. "That was flawless," he said, grinning. Then came Carter Marketing's turn. Alicia strode to the podium, her posture all business. My sister's presentation was slick, billboards with bold slogans, radio jingles, a glossy brochure. Dawn and Nancy sat in the front row, their faces smug. It was professional, but it lacked soul, relying on the same old tactics Dawn had always pushed. The audience clapped politely, but I could feel the difference. Their energy didn't match ours. A tourism board member whispered to a colleague, and I caught the word dated. My team exchanged glances, we'd set a higher bar. After the presentations, the board announced their decision. "Nathan Brooks's team captures the festival's spirit," the chair said. "Their campaign is bold, innovative, and authentic." Cheers erupted from our corner. I felt a surge of pride, not just for me, but for my team's hard work. Nathan hugged me, whispering, "You did it." I scanned the room and saw Alicia's face tighten, Dawn's jaw clench, Nancy's eyes dart away. For the first time, I wasn't invisible to them. The networking hour followed, and I knew I couldn't avoid them. I spotted my family near a sponsor booth, their expressions a mix of frustration and disbelief. I walked over my steps, deliberate. Alicia saw me first, her lips pursing. "Well, look who's here," she said, her tone sharp. Dawn folded his arms and Nancy avoided my gaze. I stood tall, meeting their eyes. "Alicia," I said, my voice calm. "Dawn, Nancy, I'm not here to gloat. I just want you to know I've built something real." Alicia scoffed. "You got lucky," she said. "This doesn't prove anything." I shook my head. "It proves I don't need your approval to succeed." I never did. Dawn opened his mouth, but no words came. Nancy fidgeted her hands, twisting her purse strap. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked away, feeling lighter with every step. Back at our booth, Seth and Shannon were waiting. Seth pulled me into a bear hug. "You were incredible," he said. Shannon grinned, holding up a mock toast with her water bottle. "To leaving them in the dust," she said. I laughed, the tension melting. Dr. Susan's words echoed in my mind. "You're not that invisible girl anymore." She was right. This victory wasn't just about the contract. It was about proving my worth to myself most of all. As the event wound down, a board member approached me. "Your campaign's already generating buzz," she said. "We'd love to work with you again." I thanked her, my mind racing with possibilities. The festival was a turning point, a moment where I stepped out of my family's shadow. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, and they'd seen it. Walking out of the convention center, I felt a quiet strength. I'd face them not with anger, but with the truth of my success. That was enough. That night marked a new chapter. The festival's victory lingered, but I knew unfinished business awaited. Alicia's shadow still hung over me, not just her words at the dinner, but the betrayal from years ago. I'd never called her out directly. Now with our win, I felt ready to face her one-on-one. The day after the festival, I texted Alicia asking to meet. She agreed, suggesting a quiet cafe near Capitol Square. I arrived early, my nerves buzzing. My sister walked in her usual confidence, dimmed her eyes, wary. "Alicia," I said, keeping my voice steady, "we need to talk about what happened at Carter." She stiffened, crossing her arms. "What's there to say?" she asked, her tone defensive. I leaned forward. "You took my campaign idea 3 years ago. You presented it as yours, got the promotion, and never looked back." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. "You were never going to make it happen," she said. "I did what was best for the company." I shook my head. "You did what was best for you. I deserved credit, and you know it." Alicia's eyes flashed. "You're bringing this up now? After your little win?" I held her gaze. "This isn't about the festival. It's about the truth." She looked away, her fingers tapping the table. For the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. No apology, but no smugness either. I didn't need her to grovel. Saying it aloud to her face was enough to loosen the knot in my chest. Word of our victory spread fast. A local news outlet covered the festival, praising our campaign's innovation. They interviewed me, and I seized the moment. "My team's success came from hard work and originality," I said, pausing. "Unlike some competitors, we don't rely on recycled ideas." The reporter raised an eyebrow, sensing a story. I didn't name Alicia, but the implication was clear. The article hit online, and whispers about Carter Marketing's unoriginal pitch began to circulate. I hadn't planned to go public, but the truth felt right, like a weight lifted. Carter Marketing faced immediate fallout. A major client, a retail chain worth $2 million annually, pulled out of a deal with them. I heard from a former colleague that the client cited concerns about creativity after reading the article. Don and Nancy scrambled to salvage the relationship, but the damage was done. Alicia, as the face of their campaign, bore the brunt. The colleague told me she'd been called into tense meetings, her leadership questioned by partners who'd once praised her. My sister, always untouchable, was now under pressure she couldn't dodge. I didn't revel in their loss. Instead, I felt a quiet resolve. My success wasn't about destroying Carter, it was about proving I could rise above their dismissal. Nathan called me after the article dropped. "You stirred the pot," he said, chuckling. "But you earned it." He told me our campaign's social media metrics were soaring, thousands of new followers, shares doubling daily. The tourism board requested a follow-up meeting to discuss next year's festival. My team was thrilled, already brainstorming fresh ideas. Seth and Shannon kept me grounded. Over dinner at my apartment, Seth raised a glass. "To burying the past," he said. Shannon nudged me. "You didn't just win, you rewrote the story." I smiled, grateful for their support. Dr. Susan's advice echoed in my mind. "The truth sets you free, but it's your strength that carries you forward." She was right. Confronting Alicia and letting the world see my work wasn't vengeance, it was closure. Alicia's pressure didn't end with one client. Another partner, a tech firm, delayed a contract citing reputational concerns. I heard Dawn was furious, blaming Alicia for the festival loss. Nancy stayed silent as always. Part of me wondered if they'd ever acknowledge their role in pushing me away, but I didn't need their validation anymore. My life, my team, my work, my friends, was proof of my worth. As November unfolded, I focused on what lay ahead. The festival win opened doors, and I was ready to walk through them unburdened by my sister's shadow. That truth became my foundation. I was ready to root myself in Madison for good. I'd saved enough from my startup salary and freelance gigs to buy a small condo near Lake Monona. The place was modest, a one-bedroom with big windows and a tiny balcony, but it was mine. I signed the papers on a crisp morning, the realtor handing me the keys with a smile. "Welcome home," she said. I stood in the empty living room, sunlight streaming in, and felt a peace I hadn't known before. This was freedom not just from my family, but from the doubts they'd planted in me. I spent weeks making the condo my own. Shannon helped me paint the walls, a soft blue, laughing as we splattered each other with paint. Seth hauled furniture, joking about my fancy taste in thrift store finds. Nathan stopped by with a housewarming gift, a framed print of Madison's skyline. "You're building something amazing," he said, admiring the space. My team at the startup threw a small party toasting to our festival win and my new chapter. I looked around at their faces, friends who saw me, colleagues who valued me, and realized I was happy, truly happy, for the first time in years. Meanwhile, Carter Marketing was crumbling. A former colleague texted me the details after losing the retail chain and tech firm. They'd missed payments to vendors. A major investor pulled out citing mismanagement. The company was bleeding cash with debts piling up to nearly $3 million. Alicia was scrambling, but her reputation had taken a hit after the festival. Dawn and Nancy, once untouchable, were now facing boardroom scrutiny. I heard Dawn had been forced to step back, leaving Alicia to clean up the mess. My sister, always the golden child, was drowning in her own ambition. One evening, my phone buzzed with a call from Don. I hesitated but answered. "Dana," he said, his voice heavy. "We made mistakes. Can we talk?" Nancy was on the line too, her tone softer than I'd ever heard. "We miss you," she said. "Come back. We can fix this." I stared out my balcony, the lake glittering under the moon. Their words stirred something old, pain maybe, but no regret. "Dawn, Nancy," I said firmly. "I've built my own life. I don't need to fix yours." There was a long silence. Don cleared his throat, but neither spoke again. I hung up my hands steady. I wasn't angry, just done. Shannon and Seth came over the next night bringing takeout. We sat on my new couch talking about everything but my family. "You're glowing," Shannon said, nudging me. Seth grinned. "Told you you'd outshine them." I laughed, grateful for their unwavering support. Dr. Susan's words came back to me. "Your strength carries you forward." She was right. Every choice I'd made, leaving, rebuilding, confronting, thriving, had led to this moment, this life I'd carved out. Carter's collapse continued. A local paper reported they'd laid off half their staff. Alicia was named in an article about failed leadership, her once polished image now tarnished. I didn't feel joy at their downfall, only a quiet acknowledgement that their choices had consequences. My path was different. The startup was growing, with new clients reaching out after our festival success. I was leading a team, creating campaigns that mattered, living a life that felt authentic. Looking back, I saw the lesson clearly. Living true to myself was the real victory. Not the festival win, not Carter's failure, but the courage to walk away from their judgment and build something mine. I'd spent years chasing their approval, but happiness came when I stopped. My condo, my friends, my work. They were proof of my worth, not their words. As I stood on my balcony that winter watching snow dust to the lake, I knew I was exactly where I belonged,